I'll never forget the moment my sister Amanda looked my 11-year-old son Tyler straight in the eye and said those words that would change everything between us forever. We were sitting around the massive oak dining table at my childhood home in suburban Ohio, surrounded by 15 relatives enjoying what should have been a perfect Thanksgiving dinner. Tyler had just reached across the table with his small hand to grab a piece of turkey when Amanda's voice cut through the warm chatter like a knife. "Sweetheart, Thanksgiving turkey is for family," she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Several of my cousins chuckled nervously, unsure how to react. I felt my blood pressure spike as I watched Tyler's face crumble with confusion and hurt. Without saying another word, I calmly stood up, took my son's trembling hand in mine, and said the only thing that mattered, "Let's go, buddy." The 3-hour drive back to Indianapolis felt like the longest journey of my life. Tyler sat quietly in the passenger seat of my pickup truck, staring out the window at the passing cornfields as tears rolled down his cheeks. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, fighting back my own emotions while trying to process what had just happened. Amanda had always been complicated, but this level of cruelty toward an innocent child was something I never saw coming. My mind raced back to 7 years ago when Sarah Tyler's mother decided she couldn't handle being a parent anymore and simply walked out of our lives. Tyler was only 4 then, barely old enough to understand why Mommy wasn't coming home. I remember holding him as he cried himself to sleep night after night, promising him that I would never abandon him the way she had. I worked double shifts in construction for 2 years, saving every penny I could while learning how to braid his hair for school and pack nutritious lunches. Those were the hardest years of my life, but they were also the most rewarding. Watching Tyler grow from a confused little boy into a bright, curious kid who loved baseball and building model airplanes filled me with more pride than any achievement I'd ever accomplished. When I finally saved enough money to start my own renovation company, James Construction Solutions, Tyler was right there cheering me on from the sidelines. I'd always been the one in my family to step up when things got tough. When Dad passed away 2 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I covered the entire funeral cost of $8,000 because Amanda and Brad were supposedly going through a rough patch financially. When their minivan broke down last spring, I immediately wrote them a check for $3,000 to get it fixed. I never asked for anything in return because that's what family does for each other. Amanda married Brad Peterson 6 years ago, a pharmaceutical sales representative who seemed decent enough at family gatherings. They lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial house in an upscale neighborhood complete with a manicured lawn and a 2-car garage. From the outside, everything appeared perfect. Brad drove a shiny black BMW while Amanda posted photos on social media of their weekend trips to wineries and expensive restaurants. Dad. Tyler finally spoke up as we passed the exit for Lebanon. "Why did Aunt Amanda say I wasn't family?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but the pain in those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I pulled into the parking lot of a gas station and turned off the engine. Looking into my son's brown eyes, I struggled to find the right words to explain something I didn't understand myself. "Tyler, you are family. You're my family, and that's what matters most." Sometimes adults say things they don't mean when they're upset or confused. But even as I said those words, I knew this wasn't just a case of someone having a bad day. This felt calculated, deliberate, designed to hurt. My phone buzzed with a text message from my cousin. "Michelle, James. I'm so sorry about what happened. Amanda has been saying some really hurtful things about you lately. We need to talk." The drive home continued in relative silence, but my mind was spinning with questions. What had Michelle meant about Amanda saying hurtful things? How long had my sister been harboring these feelings? And why would she take them out on an innocent child who had never done anything wrong? When we finally arrived at our modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet Indianapolis suburb, Tyler went straight to his room without eating dinner. I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at my phone and debating whether to call Amanda and demand an explanation. Instead, I decided to call my mother first. "Mom, what really happened back there?" I asked when she answered on the second ring. There was a long pause before she responded. "James, honey, I think Amanda has been struggling more than she's let on. She's been making comments about how you always seem to have money for everything while she and Brad are working so hard just to get by." "What do you mean, comments?" "Well, she mentioned that you show off your financial stability whenever you come to family gatherings. She said something about how Tyler always has the newest clothes and gadgets while her kids have to make do with hand-me-downs." I nearly dropped the phone. Tyler's clothes came from Target and Walmart, just like any other middle-class kid. The newest gadgets she was referring to were a basic tablet I'd bought him for educational purposes and a second-hand bicycle I'd fixed up for his birthday. Meanwhile, Amanda's kids wore name-brand everything and attended private summer camps that cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Mom, I've given Amanda and Brad over $18,000 in the past 3 years alone. How is that showing off?" Another uncomfortable silence. "She never told me about that, James. She actually said you were irresponsible with money and that Tyler was becoming a burden on family gatherings because you couldn't afford to contribute to group gifts or events." My heart sank as the pieces began falling into place. Amanda hadn't just lashed out in a moment of frustration. She'd been systematically poisoning the family against me and Tyler for months, maybe longer. I pulled out my laptop and started going through my bank statements documenting every payment I'd made to help my sister over the years. The funeral expenses, car repairs, emergency loans when they claimed to have medical bills, even the $500 I'd given them just last month for their kids' school supplies. As I sat there adding up the numbers, Tyler appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing his pajamas. "Dad, I heard you talking to Grandma. Did I really do something wrong?" I opened my arms and he ran into them, burying his face against my chest. "No, buddy, you didn't do anything wrong. This is a grown-up problem that has nothing to do with you." But as I held my son and felt his small body shaking with confusion and hurt, I realized this had everything to do with him. Amanda hadn't just insulted me, she deliberately tried to make an 11-year-old boy feel unwanted and excluded from his own family. That was unforgivable. 3 days after the Thanksgiving disaster, I received a phone call that made everything even worse. Mrs. Rodriguez, Tyler's 5th-grade teacher at Riverside Elementary, called during my lunch break with concern in her voice. "Mr. Patterson, I wanted to reach out because Tyler has been unusually withdrawn in class since Monday. He's normally one of our most engaged students, but he's barely participated in discussions and seems quite sad. Has something happened at home?" I explained the situation as diplomatically as possible, but Mrs. Rodriguez's response told me this was more serious than I'd initially thought. "I think it might be beneficial for Tyler to speak with our school counselor, or perhaps a professional therapist. Children internalize family conflicts in ways we adults don't always recognize." That afternoon, I called Dr. Patricia Wells, a child psychologist who'd been recommended by our pediatrician. She had an opening the following day, and I immediately scheduled an appointment. Watching Tyler sit in that waiting room, nervously fidgeting with a puzzle book, broke my heart all over again. During the session, Dr. Wells gently encouraged Tyler to talk about what had happened at Thanksgiving. What he revealed made my blood run cold. This wasn't the first time Amanda had made him feel unwelcome at family events. At the summer barbecue in July, she'd told him he couldn't use the swimming pool because it was for the cousins who visit more often. During Easter dinner, she'd given her own children chocolate eggs while telling Tyler that his father probably forgot to bring contributions for the family egg hunt. I'd been blind to the pattern of subtle exclusions and microaggressions that Amanda had been subjecting my son to for months. Each incident alone seemed small enough to overlook, but together they painted a picture of deliberate psychological cruelty toward a child whose only crime was having a single father who worked hard to provide for him. That evening, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I called Danny Morrison, who worked with Brad at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Danny and I had played softball together in a city league for the past 2 years, and I knew he'd give me straight answers if something was going on. "James, I'm glad you called," Danny said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "I've been wanting to talk to you about Brad, but I wasn't sure if it was my place. He lost his job about 6 months ago. The company had layoffs, and he was one of the first to go because his sales numbers were consistently below quota." My stomach dropped. 6 months ago, but Amanda posted photos from their vacation to Myrtle Beach just last month. "Yeah, about that. Brad borrowed $2,000 from 3 different co-workers to pay for that trip. He told all of us that his rich brother-in-law would help him pay us back once he got back on his feet. I'm guessing that brother-in-law was you." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Not only had Amanda been bad-mouthing me to our family, but Brad had been using my name to secure loans from his co-workers under false pretenses. I asked Danny if he knew anything else about their financial situation. "Well, Brad's been pretty open about their struggles when he's been drinking. They're behind on their mortgage payments, and apparently Amanda's been maxing out credit cards to maintain their lifestyle. He mentioned something about gambling debts from fantasy football leagues, but I'm not sure how serious that is." After hanging up with Danny, I decided to call the mortgage company directly. Pretending to be someone interested in helping the family through a difficult time, I was able to confirm that Amanda and Brad were indeed 3 months behind on their payments and facing foreclosure proceedings within the next 60 days. The picture was becoming clearer, but it was uglier than I'd imagined. Amanda's hostility toward me wasn't just about jealousy or sibling rivalry. It was about desperation. She'd expected me to offer financial help without being asked, and when I didn't magically step in to solve their problems, she'd decided to punish me by taking it out on Tyler. The phone rang around 8 o'clock that evening. It was Amanda, and she was crying. "James, I need you to understand how upset Tyler made the children on Thanksgiving. He was acting entitled and grabbing food without asking permission. I think you need to teach him better manners before bringing him to family events." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. "Amanda, Tyler is 11 years old. He was reaching for turkey at a family dinner, not robbing a bank. And I know about Brad losing his job 6 months ago." There was dead silence on the other end of the line. "I also know you're 3 months behind on your mortgage and facing foreclosure." "That's none of your business," she snapped, but her voice was shaking. "It became my business when you started taking your financial stress out on my son. And it's definitely my business when Brad is telling his coworkers that I'll cover his debts." The conversation quickly escalated from there. Amanda became defensive, then angry, then desperate. She accused me of spying on her family and violating their privacy, but in her anger, she let slip several pieces of information that made the situation even worse. She admitted that she'd been telling extended family members that I was cheap despite being wealthy, and that I never helped family unless there was something in it for me. She'd apparently been crafting a narrative that painted me as selfish and Tyler as spoiled, hoping to generate sympathy and perhaps financial support from other relatives. The final straw came when she demanded that I pay for Christmas gifts for all the children in the family, since you clearly have more money than the rest of us. When I refused, she threatened to make sure Tyler wasn't welcome at any future family gatherings. "Fine," I said, my patience finally exhausted. "But don't call me when the bank comes to foreclose on your house." After I hung up, I sat in my home office and did something I probably should have done years ago. I pulled my credit report and discovered that Amanda had used me as a reference for 2 different credit card applications, which had resulted in hard inquiries that lowered my credit score. She'd also listed me as an emergency contact for a personal loan application that had been denied, but not before the lender had called my work number asking about my relationship to the applicant. The betrayal ran deeper than I'd realized. This wasn't just about Thanksgiving dinner or hurt feelings. Amanda had been systematically exploiting our family relationship for financial gain while simultaneously undermining my reputation and making my son feel unwanted. The time for being understanding and compassionate had passed. It was time to protect Tyler and myself from further manipulation. The phone call that changed everything came exactly 1 week after my confrontation with Amanda. Robert Chen, the family attorney who had handled our father's estate, called me at 7 in the morning while I was making Tyler's breakfast. James, I need to ask you about some concerning conversations I've had recently. Your sister contacted me about initiating a custody inquiry regarding Tyler's welfare. She's made some very serious allegations about your fitness as a parent. I nearly dropped the phone. What kind of allegations? She claims you have significant gambling debts, that your housing situation is unstable, and that you've been dating women who are inappropriate around Tyler. She's requesting information about how to petition for temporary guardianship based on these concerns. My hands were shaking as I processed what Robert was telling me. Amanda hadn't just been undermining me socially and financially, she was now actively trying to take my son away from me. The realization that she would go this far made me physically sick. Robert, none of that is true. I don't gamble, I own my house outright, and I haven't seriously dated anyone since Tyler's mother left. What exactly is she trying to accomplish? Based on our conversation, I believe she's researching state benefits and support programs available to families caring for children. There are financial incentives for relatives who take in children from what the state considers unstable homes. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Amanda wasn't trying to save Tyler from an unfit parent. She was trying to claim him as a dependent to access government assistance while simultaneously solving her own financial crisis. My sister was literally trying to profit from stealing my son. I immediately called my lawyer, Marcus Thompson, who also handled some of my business contracts. Marcus was appalled by what I told him and recommended that I start documenting everything Amanda had done. He also suggested hiring a private investigator to uncover the full extent of her financial desperation. The investigation revealed details that made Amanda's behavior even more sinister. She had applied for emergency family assistance programs using Tyler as a potential dependent, claiming that she was his primary caregiver during a family crisis. She'd also contacted Tyler's school and had herself added as an emergency contact without my knowledge or consent. Most disturbing of all, Marcus discovered that Amanda had called Child Protective Services with an anonymous tip claiming that I was neglecting Tyler's basic needs. The CPS investigation had been closed within a week after they visited our home and interviewed Tyler at school, finding absolutely no evidence of neglect or abuse. But Tyler had been questioned by social workers without my knowledge, adding another layer of trauma to what Amanda had already put him through. When I gently asked Tyler about the CPS visit, thinking it was just a routine school procedure, his response broke my heart. "Dad, the lady asked me if I had enough food at home and if you ever left me alone at night. I told her you make me breakfast every morning and we eat dinner together every night, and that you've never left me alone except when Mrs. Patterson from next door watches me if you have to work late. Why did she think you weren't taking good care of me?" I held my son close, realizing that Amanda's manipulation had reached a level of evil I hadn't thought possible. She was willing to traumatize an 11-year-old boy and potentially destroy his sense of security just to solve her own financial problems. Brad's confession came 2 days later when I met him at a sports bar near his old office. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes and clearly stressed beyond his limits. "James, I need to tell you something about Amanda's plans," he said after ordering his third beer in 30 minutes. "She's been obsessed with your lifestyle for over a year now. She tracks your social media posts, screenshots photos of Tyler's birthday parties, and calculates how much money you must be spending. She convinced herself that you were deliberately flaunting your success to make our family feel inadequate. Brad, I post maybe once a month, usually just pictures of Tyler at baseball games or school events. I know, but Amanda doesn't see it that way. She created this fantasy where you're secretly wealthy and hiding money from the family while watching us struggle. When I lost my job, she became convinced that you should step in and support us financially without being asked." Brad went on to explain that Amanda had spent hours researching single-father support programs and custody laws. She'd convinced herself that Tyler would be better off in a two-parent household with financial stability, even if that meant taking him away from his loving father. She told me that once we got temporary custody, we could apply for state support, claim Tyler as a dependent for tax purposes, and maybe even get additional assistance for caring for a child from a broken home. She calculated that Tyler could be worth over $15,000 a year in various benefits and tax breaks. I felt nauseated listening to Brad describe how my sister had reduced my son to a financial calculation. Tyler wasn't a nephew she loved and wanted to protect. He was a source of revenue she wanted to exploit. The gambling debts are real. Brad continued, his voice barely audible over the bar's background noise. I got into online fantasy football betting during the playoffs last year. Lost about $12,000 before I realized how deep I was in. Amanda doesn't know the full extent of it, but the people I owe money to aren't the kind who accept payment plans. The conversation ended with Brad begging me not to tell Amanda that he'd confessed everything. He was terrified that she would leave him if she knew about the gambling debts, and equally terrified of what the loan sharks might do if he couldn't pay them back soon. As I drove home that night, I realized that Tyler and I were caught in the middle of a much larger disaster than I'd originally understood. Amanda's desperation had turned her into someone capable of destroying her own family to save herself. But I also realized that I now had enough information to protect Tyler and potentially help my sister if she was willing to accept help on reasonable terms. The question was whether Amanda could be reasoned with, or whether I would have to take more drastic action to keep my son safe from her increasingly dangerous schemes. The revelation that would ultimately give me the power to end Amanda's schemes came from the most unexpected source imaginable. I was meeting with my financial advisor, Marcus Thompson, for our quarterly investment portfolio review when he mentioned something that made my blood run cold. "James, I wanted to update you on the performance of your residential mortgage securities investment through the REIT program. The portfolio has been generating steady returns, and we've actually acquired some additional properties in the Ohio market through recent bank consolidations. I'd been investing in real estate investment trusts for 3 years, diversifying my construction company profits into stable long-term investments. Marcus had recommended mortgage-backed securities as a way to generate passive income while contributing to local housing markets. Can you show me exactly which properties are in the Ohio portfolio?" I asked, though I wasn't sure why I was suddenly interested in the details. Marcus pulled up the digital portfolio on his computer screen and began scrolling through addresses and loan numbers. When he reached the 3rd page, my heart nearly stopped. There, listed among the residential mortgages that I technically owned through my investment group, was Amanda and Brad's house ads. Marcus, that address, 472 Maple Ridge Drive in Westerville, Ohio. That's my sister's house. He looked at the screen more carefully, then pulled up additional documentation. "You're right. The loan was purchased from Midwest Community Bank during their acquisition by our partner firm 6 months ago. Based on the investment structure, you own approximately 18% of the loan servicing rights, which gives you significant influence over payment schedules and foreclosure proceedings." The cosmic irony of the situation was almost too much to process. Amanda had been desperately trying to manipulate me into giving her money to save her house, not realizing that I already owned a substantial stake in the very mortgage she was struggling to pay. Her survival literally depended on the brother she was trying to destroy. "What are the current payment options for this particular loan?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well, the borrowers are currently 97 days delinquent. Standard procedure would be to begin foreclosure proceedings at 120 days. However, given your ownership stake, you could request immediate payment of the full balance, negotiate a modified payment schedule, or recommend acceleration of the foreclosure timeline." I asked Marcus to prepare a detailed report on all my options regarding Amanda's mortgage, but I didn't tell him about the family connection or the ongoing conflict. I needed time to think about how to use this information responsibly. Meanwhile, Amanda's campaign against me was escalating to new levels of viciousness. My cousin Michelle called to warn me that Amanda was planning a Christmas gathering specifically designed to exclude Tyler and me from family celebrations. "She's been calling everyone individually, telling them that you've become too arrogant and that Tyler is developing behavioral problems because of your permissive parenting style. She's convinced our Aunt Karen that you're a bad influence on the younger cousins." The Facebook posts started appearing daily. Amanda would share articles about the importance of family values and traditional holiday celebrations, accompanied by passive-aggressive comments about Some people who think money is more important than family bonds. She posted photos from previous family gatherings with Tyler carefully cropped out of group pictures. But Amanda's most damaging attack came when she contacted 3 of my former business partners, trying to spread rumors about my professional reliability. She called Dave Morrison, who had referred several clients to my construction company, claiming that I had become unreliable and difficult to work with since my business started succeeding. Fortunately, Dave called me immediately to warn me about the conversation and to assure me that he didn't believe a word of what Amanda had said. Tyler's emotional state continued to deteriorate despite our regular therapy sessions with Dr. Wells. He'd started asking questions that no 11-year-old should have to think about. Dad, if Aunt Amanda doesn't want me at family parties, does that mean Grandma doesn't want me there either? What about my cousins? Do they think I'm not really part of the family? One evening, Tyler asked me something that nearly brought me to tears. Dad, can we change our last name to something different so people will know we're our own family? I don't want to be related to people who don't want me around. The breaking point came when my private investigator friend, Detective Lisa Rodriguez, called me with disturbing news. Amanda and Brad were planning to file for bankruptcy, but they intended to blame their financial collapse on me, cutting them off financially after years of supporting them. They were going to claim that I had promised to help with their mortgage payments and then suddenly withdrawn support without warning. James, they're preparing to sue you for something called promissory estoppel, basically claiming that they relied on your verbal promises of financial support to make major financial decisions. They think they can force you to pay their debts by claiming you created a legal obligation through your past generosity. I realized that Amanda's desperation had reached a point where she was willing to destroy me completely to save herself. She wasn't just trying to take Tyler away. She was preparing to take everything I'd worked for over the past 7 years. That night I sat in my home office with Marcus's report about the mortgage investment spread across my desk. The legal documents gave me the power to demand immediate payment of Amanda's full mortgage balance, approximately $237,000, or accelerate foreclosure proceedings to recover the investment. I also had enough documented evidence of Amanda's harassment, false claims, and attempts to manipulate the family to file restraining orders and potentially press charges for fraud related to her unauthorized use of my name on credit applications. But as I looked at Tyler's school photo on my desk, I realized that the nuclear option wasn't necessarily the right option. Tyler loved his cousins, and despite everything Amanda had done, he still hoped to maintain some relationship with his extended family. Destroying his aunt completely might give me satisfaction, but it wouldn't help Tyler heal from the trauma she'd already caused. The question was whether Amanda could be shocked into reasonable behavior or whether she was too far gone to save. Either way, I was done being the victim of her manipulation. It was time to take control of the situation and protect my son from further damage. Christmas Eve arrived with a bitter irony that I should have anticipated. Amanda had arranged an elaborate family celebration at our cousin Michelle's house, complete with catered dinner, professional photographs, and carefully coordinated gift exchanges. The Facebook event page she'd created showed 23 family members marked as attending, with only Tyler and me conspicuously absent from the invitation list. Michelle had secretly invited us after receiving several concerned phone calls from relatives who were beginning to question Amanda's version of our family conflict. James, something doesn't feel right about excluding you and Tyler from Christmas. Whatever happened between you and Amanda, Tyler shouldn't be punished for it. I debated whether to attend, knowing it would likely create drama on what should be a peaceful holiday. But Tyler had been asking about Christmas plans, and I could see the disappointment in his eyes when I couldn't give him a clear answer about seeing his cousins. Dr. Wells had also suggested that avoiding family completely might reinforce Tyler's fears about not belonging. We arrived at Michelle's house around 6 o'clock, just as the extended family was gathering in the living room for present opening. Tyler's face lit up when he saw his cousins, and they ran to hug him with genuine excitement. Whatever poison Amanda had been spreading hadn't affected the children's natural affection for each other. Amanda's expression when she saw us walk through the front door was a mixture of shock, anger, and something that looked almost like fear. She was wearing an expensive red dress that I knew cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget, and she'd clearly spent considerable effort making this gathering look perfect for the professional photographer she'd hired. "I didn't realize you were planning to come," she said, her voice tight with forced politeness. "Michelle invited us," I replied, simply helping Tyler out of his coat. "We brought gifts for the cousins." The first hour passed relatively peacefully. Tyler played with his cousins while the adults caught up on family news and enjoyed Michelle's excellent cooking. I noticed several relatives asking Amanda quiet questions about why Tyler and I had been excluded from recent events, but she deflected them with vague comments about scheduling conflicts and difficult family dynamics. The explosion came during the gift exchange. Amanda had organized an elaborate system where each family was supposed to contribute equally to a pool for purchasing presents for all the children. When Tyler's turn came to open gifts, Amanda made her announcement. "Tyler, sweetheart, you shouldn't expect too many presents this year since your daddy didn't contribute to our family gift fund. Maybe next year he'll remember to participate like everyone else." The room fell silent except for the sound of Tyler's wrapping paper crumpling in his small hands. I felt the familiar surge of rage, but this time I was prepared. My Uncle Robert, Dad's older brother and the family patriarch, spoke up before I could respond. "Amanda, what do you mean James didn't contribute? I remember him paying for Dad's entire funeral when none of the rest of us could afford it." Amanda's face flushed red. "That's different. I'm talking about regular family contributions like group gifts and shared expenses for gatherings like this." "You mean like the $3,000 I gave you for car repairs last spring?" I asked quietly, pulling out the folder I'd prepared. "Or the $2,000 for your kids' medical bills in July? Or the $1,500 I transferred to your account last month for school supplies?" The room was completely silent now, except for the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Even the children had stopped playing and were watching the adults with confused expressions. "Those were loans," Amanda said, her voice rising defensively. "James always acts like he's doing us favors, but those were loans that we fully intend to pay back." I opened the folder and began reading from the documentation I'd prepared. Car repairs. $3,000 transferred April 15th. Text message from Amanda. "Thank you so much, James. We're so grateful. We'll pay you back when things get better." Medical bills, $2,000 transferred July 22nd. Email from Amanda. "You saved us from bankruptcy. We'll never forget this generosity." Amanda tried to interrupt, but I continued reading. Emergency home repairs, $4,000 transferred September 10th. Phone conversation where Amanda said, and I quote from the voicemail she left, "James, you're an angel. I don't know what we would do without you. We love you so much." I looked up at my sister, who was now visibly trembling. "Would you like me to continue with the complete list? Because I have documentation for every single payment, including the $8,000 I covered for Dad's funeral when you told Mom you couldn't afford to help." Uncle Robert's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Amanda, are you telling me that James has given your family over $20,000 and you've been complaining to everyone that he's selfish and doesn't help family eat?" Before Amanda could answer, my Aunt Karen spoke up. "Wait. Amanda, didn't you tell me that James was financially irresponsible and couldn't afford to contribute to family expenses?" The web of lies was unraveling in real time. Amanda looked around the room at faces that were shifting from confusion to understanding to disappointment. Brad was sitting in the corner looking like he wanted to disappear into the furniture. "James exaggerates everything," Amanda said desperately. "Those payments were much smaller than he's claiming, and they were loans that he never expected us to pay back anyway." I pulled out the second set of documents. "Here are the signed loan agreements, Amanda. The ones you insisted we create because you said you wanted everything to be official and fair. $23,400 total over 4 years. 0 payments received. Tyler, who had been watching this entire exchange with wide eyes, suddenly spoke up in a clear voice that carried across the room. "Why do grown-ups lie about money? If Daddy helped Aunt Amanda so much, why did she say mean things to me at Thanksgiving?" The innocent question from an 11-year-old cut through all the adult complications and got to the heart of the matter. Amanda's response revealed just how far she had fallen. "Tyler, children shouldn't interrupt when adults are discussing serious matters. This conversation doesn't concern you." Uncle Robert's face turned red with anger. "Amanda, that boy is family. This whole conversation started because you told him he wasn't family. Everything we're discussing absolutely concerns him." The confrontation escalated quickly from there. Amanda accused me of ruining Christmas by bringing up financial matters during a family celebration. Other relatives began sharing stories about conversations they'd had with Amanda, where she'd made negative comments about me and Tyler. Aunt Karen revealed that Amanda had tried to convince her not to invite us to Easter dinner because we were becoming a disruptive influence on family gatherings. Michelle's husband finally intervened when Amanda started screaming at Tyler to stop staring at her like that. The professional photographer Amanda had hired to document this perfect family Christmas quietly packed up her equipment and left. Amanda stormed out of the house with Brad and their children, but not before delivering one final attack. "This family will never be the same because of what you've done here tonight, James. You've destroyed everything for the sake of your precious ego." As the door slammed behind her, the remaining relatives sat in stunned silence. Tyler looked up at me with tears in his eyes and asked, "Dad, did I ruin Christmas for everyone?" Uncle Robert answered before I could. "No, son. Christmas was already ruined by someone who forgot what family really means." The rest of the evening was spent with relatives apologizing for not speaking up sooner and sharing stories about their own concerns regarding Amanda's behavior over the past year. Several family members admitted they'd been confused by Amanda's claims about me, but hadn't wanted to get involved in what they thought was just sibling rivalry. Tyler spent the rest of the evening playing happily with his cousins, finally feeling secure in the knowledge that most of his extended family genuinely cared about him. But I knew this public confrontation was only the beginning. Amanda's desperation would likely lead to even more extreme behavior, and I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. The week between Christmas and New Year's Eve gave me time to plan what I knew would be the final confrontation with Amanda. Tyler's spirits had improved dramatically after seeing how warmly the rest of our family had embraced him at Christmas, but I could see that he was still carrying emotional scars from months of subtle rejection and manipulation. Dr. Wells suggested that a positive confidence-building experience might help Tyler process the trauma and move forward. "Children heal through experiencing unconditional love and security," she explained. "Sometimes the best therapy is simply demonstrating that he's valued and cherished." That's when I decided to plan the most extravagant vacation of Tyler's life. I wanted him to experience pure joy and adventure, while also sending a clear message to Amanda about priorities and consequences. I booked first-class flights to Nassau, reserved an oceanfront suite at the Atlantis Paradise Island Resort, and arranged private snorkeling tours, dolphin encounters, and yacht excursions. The total cost was going to be approximately $45,000, but Tyler was worth every penny. This wasn't just a vacation. It was therapy bonding and a declaration of independence all rolled into one unforgettable week. Tyler had never been on an airplane before, much less in first-class accommodations. Watching his eyes widen as we settled into leather seats with personal entertainment systems and gourmet meal service was worth more than any material possession I'd ever purchased. The flight attendant noting it was Tyler's first flight arranged for him to visit the cockpit and receive a pair of pilot wings. "Dad, is this real?" he whispered as we flew over the Atlantic Ocean, staring out the window at endless blue water below. "Are we really going to swim in the ocean?" The Atlantis resort exceeded even my high expectations. Our suite had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the turquoise harbor, a separate bedroom for Tyler filled with marine life books and educational games, and access to private beach areas where we could snorkel right from the shore. Tyler's first experience swimming with dolphins was magical in ways I hadn't anticipated. Watching him laugh with pure delight as a bottlenose dolphin named Marina gently pushed him through the water erased months of sadness from his face. The marine biologist leading the program commented that she'd rarely seen a child connect so naturally with the dolphins. "Your son has a natural empathy and curiosity that the dolphins respond to," she explained as Tyler floated peacefully while Marina swam circles around him. "He's going to remember this experience for the rest of his life." We spent 5 days exploring underwater caves, learning about coral reef ecosystems, sailing on a private catamaran, and eating at restaurants where Tyler tried exotic foods he'd never heard of. He made friends with children from around the world, gained confidence in the water, and began talking about wanting to become a marine biologist when he grew up. Most importantly, I watched my son rediscover his natural joy and curiosity. The withdrawn, anxious child who had been questioning his worth and place in the family was replaced by a confident, excited boy who couldn't wait to share his adventures with his cousins. I documented every moment of our trip extensively, not for social media attention but because I wanted Tyler to have permanent reminders of this transformative experience. Photos of him feeding stingrays, snorkeling over shipwrecks, watching sunset from our private beach cabana, and grinning as he held tropical fish he'd helped catch during our deep-sea fishing expedition. On our final night in the Bahamas, as we sat on our suite's balcony, watching the harbor lights reflect on the water, Tyler said something that made me realize how much he'd grown during our week away. "Dad, I understand now why Aunt Amanda was so mean to me. She was scared that you loved me more than you loved her. But the thing is, love isn't like money where you run out if you give too much away. You taught me that this week." The wisdom from an 11-year-old who had learned to forgive while still protecting himself was humbling and inspiring. When I began posting photos from our trip, I was strategic about the timing and messaging. Each post focused on father-son bonding and gratitude for experiences that money couldn't truly buy. The caption for Tyler swimming with dolphins read, "Grateful for family who matter and memories that last forever." The sunset dinner photo was captioned, "Teaching my son that love and adventure are the greatest investments." The response from extended family was overwhelmingly positive. Cousins, aunts, and uncles commented with excitement and congratulations. Several relatives mentioned how happy Tyler looked and how wonderful it was to see him smiling so genuinely. Amanda's silence on social media was deafening. I knew she was seeing every post, calculating the cost, and probably calling Brad to demand explanations for how I could afford such extravagance while she faced foreclosure. The call came on our last day in paradise. Tyler was napping in his bedroom after an exhausting morning of jet skiing and parasailing when my phone rang. Amanda's name appeared on the screen, and I knew the moment of reckoning had arrived. "How can you afford this?" Her voice was tight with panic and desperation. "This trip must cost more than most people make in an entire year. Where did you get this kind of money?" I walked out onto the balcony where Tyler couldn't hear our conversation and responded with calm satisfaction. "It's amazing how much extra money you have when you're not supporting ungrateful relatives who treat your child like garbage." "James, that's not fair. We're family and family helps each other through difficult times." "You're absolutely right, Amanda. Family does help each other. That's why I've given you over $23,000 in 4 years. But family also protects and cherishes each other's children. You failed at that fundamental responsibility." The desperation in her voice increased. "James, please. We're going to lose the house. Brad's gambling debts are worse than I told you, and the bank is threatening foreclosure. We need help." "I know about the foreclosure timeline," I said quietly. "I also know about Brad's $12,000 in gambling debts and your credit card maxing to maintain appearances." "How could you possibly know?" "Easy," I replied, savoring the moment I'd been waiting for. "I paused paying your mortgage." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that I thought she might have hung up. When Amanda finally spoke, Her voice was barely a whisper. What do you mean? I mean that through my investment portfolio, I own 18% of your mortgage loan. The monthly payments that are keeping you out of foreclosure. Those are coming from my investment returns. And I recently instructed my financial advisor to suspend those payments until further notice. Another long silence followed by the sound of Amanda beginning to hyperventilate. James, you can't do this. We'll lose everything. The children will have to change schools. Brad's parents will find out about the gambling. Please, I'll do anything. Anything? I asked. Will you publicly apologize to Tyler for telling him he wasn't family? Will you attend therapy sessions to address why you thought it was acceptable to traumatize an 11-year-old child? Will you stop spreading lies about me to our relatives? Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll do all of that. Please don't destroy our family. I'm not destroying your family, Amanda. I'm protecting mine. The mortgage payments will resume when I see genuine change in how you treat Tyler and me. Until then, you have approximately 37 days to figure out alternative arrangements. As I hung up the phone and returned to our suite where Tyler was just waking up from his nap, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete peace of mind. The power dynamic had shifted permanently, but more importantly, Tyler was safe, confident, and surrounded by love. The real test would come when we returned home, and Amanda had to decide whether her pride was worth more than her house. Returning to Indianapolis after our transformative week in the Bahamas felt like coming back to a different world. Tyler was a changed child, confident, happy, and secure in the knowledge that he was deeply loved and valued. He couldn't wait to return to school and share photos of his adventures with his classmates and teachers. The first sign that Amanda was ready to change came in the form of a handwritten letter that arrived 2 days after we got home. Her usually perfect handwriting was shaky, and there were obvious tear stains on the paper. Dear James and Tyler, it began. I have spent the past week thinking about my behavior and the pain I have caused. I realize now that my financial stress and jealousy turned me into someone I don't recognize or respect. Tyler, you are family, and I should have been the aunt who made you feel special and loved instead of the one who made you feel unwanted. I am deeply sorry for hurting you both. The letter went on to request family therapy sessions and asked if we could meet to discuss how she could make amends. For the first time in months, Amanda's words sounded genuine rather than manipulative. Dr. Wells agreed to facilitate family therapy sessions, but she insisted that Amanda attend individual counseling first to address her own issues before involving Tyler in the healing process. Children can sense authenticity, she explained. Tyler needs to see real change in Amanda's behavior, not just apologies. Amanda's first individual session with Dr. Wells was apparently quite intense. When she emerged from the office, her eyes were red from crying, but she looked relieved in a way I hadn't seen in years. I told Dr. Wells about everything, she said as we sat in the waiting room. The financial pressure, my jealousy of your success, my fear that you would eventually abandon our family completely because we weren't good enough. I know that doesn't excuse what I did to Tyler, but I want you to understand that it was never really about him. Over the following weeks, Amanda attended therapy twice a week, while also working with a financial counselor to address the family's debt crisis. Brad joined her for several sessions to discuss his gambling addiction and their marriage problems. The process was difficult and sometimes painful, but both of them seemed committed to genuine change. The breakthrough came during our fourth joint therapy session when Amanda directly addressed Tyler. Tyler, I want you to know that when I said those hurtful things to you, it had nothing to do with who you are or how much you deserve to be loved. I was scared and angry about grown-up problems, and I took those feelings out on you because you were an easy target. That was cruel and wrong, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how special you are to our family. Tyler, who had been quiet during most of our therapy sessions, finally spoke up. Aunt Amanda, I forgive you because Dad taught me that holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you. But I need you to promise that you'll never make me feel unwanted again. I promise, Amanda replied, tears streaming down her face. And if I ever forget that promise, I want you to remind me. The transformation in family dynamics was gradual but unmistakable. Amanda began actively including Tyler in family planning, asking his opinion about holiday gatherings and making sure he felt welcome at all events. She also started publicly acknowledging my contributions to the family, correcting relatives who had believed her earlier negative comments about me. 6 months after our Bahamas trip, Amanda posted a public Facebook message that surprised everyone. "I want to publicly thank my brother James for his incredible generosity and patience over the years. I allowed my own insecurities and financial stress to blind me to what an amazing father and brother he is. Tyler is lucky to have him, and I'm lucky to have them both in my life." The mortgage situation resolved itself in a way that demonstrated how family relationships could be rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect rather than manipulation. I resumed the investment payments but restructured them as a formal loan with clear terms and expectations. Amanda and Brad both took part-time jobs to supplement their income and demonstrate their commitment to financial responsibility. More importantly, I hired Brad for an entry-level position with my construction company. He had no experience in construction, but he was motivated to rebuild his life and support his family honestly. Watching him learn new skills and take pride in honest work was rewarding for all of us. Tyler's relationship with his extended family flourished in ways that exceeded my hopes. He became the coordinator for cousin activities at family gatherings, organizing games and making sure everyone felt included. His natural empathy and leadership skills, probably strengthened by his own experience of exclusion, made him a unifying force within the family. The following Thanksgiving was held at my house, with Tyler proudly helping to cook the turkey and insisting on saying grace before the meal. His prayer was simple but profound. "Thank you for our family, especially the ones who love us even when we make mistakes, and for teaching us that forgiveness makes us stronger." See. Amanda and Brad's children thrived with the increased stability and honesty in their home. Without the constant stress of financial deception and family conflict, they were able to focus on school friendships and normal childhood development. Tyler excelled in 6th grade, maintained his new friendships from our Bahamas trip through social media, and began taking marine biology courses at the local community center. His confidence and happiness were infectious, inspiring other children and adults who knew our story. Dr. Wells eventually declared our family therapy successfully completed, but she recommended that we maintain regular check-ins to preserve the healthy communication patterns we'd developed. You've all learned that conflict can strengthen relationships when it's handled with love and respect, rather than manipulation and revenge. 2 years later, Tyler and I returned to the Bahamas for another father-son adventure, but this time Amanda and Brad's family joined us. Watching Tyler teach his younger cousins to snorkel and seeing Amanda genuinely enjoy her children's happiness without financial stress was the ultimate vindication of the difficult journey we'd all traveled. The life lesson that emerged from our experience was deeper than I initially realized. Family isn't defined by blood relationships or obligations. It's created through love, respect, and the courage to protect what matters most. Sometimes the greatest act of love is setting firm boundaries, and sometimes forgiveness requires consequences before it can lead to genuine healing. Tyler learned that his worth isn't determined by other people's approval or rejection. I learned that generosity without boundaries can enable destructive behavior, and that protecting your child sometimes requires difficult confrontations with people you love. Amanda learned that authentic relationships require honesty, humility, and the courage to admit when you're wrong. Our family ultimately became stronger because we faced our problems directly rather than avoiding them or pretending they didn't exist. The Bahamas trip that initially seemed like an expensive form of revenge ultimately became the catalyst for healing that none of us expected. Sometimes the best investment you can make is showing someone you love that they're worth fighting for, even when that fight requires standing up to family members who have lost their way. What do you think is the most important lesson families should learn about setting boundaries while still showing love and forgiveness? Have you ever had to make difficult choices to protect someone you care about from family members who were causing harm? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you or reminded you of challenges in your own family relationships, please hit the like button and share it with others who might benefit from Tyler's journey toward healing and self-worth. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming family conflicts and building stronger relationships through love boundaries and authentic communication. Thank you for joining Tyler and me on this emotional journey. May your own families find the courage to choose love over pride, healing over hurt, and hope over despair. Remember that every child deserves to feel wanted, valued, and secure in their family relationships, and sometimes protecting that requires standing up to the people who should know better.